welcome back to Talking Dragon Age, the show where I talk about Dragon Age. Today we're talking about why the Qunari military is invading Thedas, while the Qunari priesthood and working class are not okay with that. I went over this a little in my video for the Qunari invasion of Tevinter, but now we're going to get a bit more into the nitty-gritty of things. See, the Qunari society is structured so that the three main groups, military, priesthood, and workers, are always in balance and cooperating. The Antaam, the military, cannot act unless all the groups are in agreement, which they are currently not. This happened in Kirkwall. If you let the Arishok go without a fight, he's later stripped of his rank because he defied the Qun by attacking Kirkwall, while he thought he was following the Qun. The difference here is that the old Arishok and his men were out of touch with Parvalan for years, while the Antaam invading Tevinter were actually there before they decided to invade. So what happened? Well, we'll first have to discuss the Vidasala's faction from Trespasser. The Vidasala is one of three leaders of the Ben Hasrath. She is responsible for containing magic, and also the conversion of foreigners to the Qun. I feel like those should be two separate branches, but whatever. The whole Dragon's Breath plan was to smuggle Gatlock through the Eluvians and plant them all over the Exalted Council, where a huge number of important nobles from all over Thedas were, as well as in Val Royeaux, Denerim, across the Free Marches, and who knows what other places. With so many nobles dead, the Qunari would take advantage of the chaos and swoop in to conquer them, and as we all know, swooping is bad. This operation required a huge amount of workers, soldiers from the Antaam, and a bunch of other Ben Hasrath agents. We find a crumpled letter in the Darvarad that claims the Vidasala's actions were not sanctioned. It's possible she intercepted this letter and didn't like it, or it was a draft that was written and then discarded. We can't say for sure whether or not the Vidasala's actions were sanctioned or not. There is evidence pointing both ways. In the yes, they were sanctioned camp, we have the fact that she had so many people working for her, including workers and soldiers, and she had access to all that Gatlock in the first place. And perhaps most of all, the Iron Bull readily sides with her when she gives the order. In the no, they were not sanctioned camp, we have the fact that she gave Cerebos Lyrium, which she was specifically not supposed to do according to her job description, no matter what benefits there might have been to strengthening the Veil. They really should have gone with the Qunari Templars idea. That is just so much better. And what else? Well, I don't think we can reliably count that letter as evidence. So, yeah, I guess that's it. I guess I was just giving the Qunari the benefit of the doubt and assuming they wouldn't be that stupid. So it probably did come down from the top, but we can't be totally certain. But what does this have to do with Sten, the new Arishok, being manipulated? Well, despite the failure of the Dragon's Breath plan, the Qunari military invaded Tevinter without Ben Hasrath's support. That's a key point. If the Dragon's Breath was the plan, why are they pulling back? One way or another, the Dragon's Breath plan came from the Ben Hasrath. Whether the Vidasala was acting alone or not, it was a Ben Hasrath plot. It had to be, to have so much Gatlock and all those other agents. They surely know the Antaam will have a huge disadvantage without the support from the rest of the Qun, which means the Qun itself is at risk. If the Antaam are beaten in Tevinter, they won't be able to stop a counterattack from the rest of Thedas. The question is whether the rest of Thedas would join in. Well, assuming they don't, even after the events at the Winter Palace and finding Gatlock barrels in Val Royeaux and Denerim, they probably will after the Qunari invade Rivain. Let's back up a minute, we got some stuff to explain. So back in the day, after the Qunari's first wars to conquer Thedas, they signed a peace treaty with every nation except Tevinter. These were known as the Lomaran Accords. Essentially, the Qunari would get to keep the northern archipelago, not to be confused with the southern archipelago or the eastern or western ones, and all hostilities would cease. It was broken twice immediately thereafter, because Qunari converts in northern Rivain refused to go to Parvalan, so they were slaughtered by forces from the Rivaini Chantry. As a result, northern Rivain is technically under Qunari control, Meanwhile, Ravain has had a long issue with the Southern Chantry because of their magical traditions. This is especially true after the Mage Rebellion, which saw the Rite of Annulment invoked against a Ravaini circle of Magi. And here's where we come to the events of Tevinter Nights. As we learn in Three Trees to Midnight, the Antaam are essentially enslaving any able-bodied people they take prisoner, officially as part of their re-education programs. This involves chaining people and putting them to work doing stuff like gathering materials, washing linens, stuff like that. In a normal invasion, they would have Qunari workers for this sort of thing. They're also using their poison Kamek, but because the Antaam aren't usually the ones that administer that, they don't know the proper doses, so they just overdose everyone, effectively turning them into mindless, obedient workers. The protagonists of the story are escaped prisoners, a Dalish elf named Strife, and a lower-class Tevinter mage named Miriam. Meanwhile, a Ben Hasrath agent was at that same camp under the guise of a member of the Antaam. The reason being rumors that the Antaam were not acting in accordance with the Qun, and in fact were brutal and savage. After assessing the situation, he tells our protagonists that he believes the rumors are true. He is cordial to them and lets them go. Through the story, he appears saddened by senseless deaths. But the Dalish elf, Strife, was himself reporting on Qunari activities and plans. We're not going to talk about Strife's character here because I want to stay focused on the Qunari. Strife stole plans that show the Qunari are preparing to invade Ravain, and he and his clan want to go warn the other Dalish clans. We can speculate as to why the Dalish care, but I personally think it's as simple as the Dalish are there and they know they won't be spared by the Qun. In any event, the point is that Strife stole plans that indicate the Qunari are preparing to invade Ravain, which will definitely draw the rest of Thedas into the war. Why would they do this and not just focus on Tevinter? Splitting their efforts makes no tactical sense. Could be a few reasons. Tevinter may be doing better than the Qunari want to admit, and so they want to change strategies. Tevinter is powerful, do not underestimate them. Another possible reason is that by invading Ravain and drawing the rest of Thedas into the war, the Antaam may hope that will force the rest of the Qunari to join in as well. The Ben Hasrath are remaining focused on Fen'Harel, as explained in the story half up front. But if the rest of Thedas gets involved, it's true they may be forced to deal with that. But we keep coming back to the question of why the Antaam are doing this in the first place. Why aren't they focused on Solas as well? Why are they attacking instead of defending? Why is Sten, the new Arishok, defying the Qun? I believe it's because he's being manipulated by a slippery, conniving, low-down snake in the grass, Rasan. Okay, I gotta do some more explaining for the people who don't know. So in the comic Those Who Speak, we meet a Tamasran called Rasan. In Tevinter Nights, in the story Genetivi Dies in the End, we see that same title, Rasan. People have wondered if they are the same person, because Qunari roles are sort of common, like there are many Stens. However, I am 99% sure they are the same person, because Rasan is talked about in the world of Thedas, where it's explained that Rasan roughly translates to chosen heir, and Rasan is the heir to the Arikun, the spiritual leader of the Qunari. Although it is possible that something may have happened to the original Rasan seen in Those Who Speak, and a new Rasan was chosen, there is more evidence than that. For starters, in Those Who Speak and Genetivi Dies in the End, two very inconvenient names, Rasan is shown to have an obsession with true names. In addition, they made a point of sparing her at the end of Those Who Speak. So it would be weird if the writers replaced her. Finally, Rasan is said to be a traveler, occasionally going on expeditions ordered by the Arikun, as she directly answers to the Arikun. But she is usually right beside the Arishok, advising him on the will of the Qun. And here's where we come to Sten being manipulated. In Genetivi Dies in the End, Rasan calls the warriors with her Antaam. Additionally, Genetivi, who has had experience with the Qunari in the past, says they are not acting the way Qunari normally do. In the world of Thedas, our Sten is said to be a curious person, which is unusual for someone of his position. As well, in Origins, he kind of flexes the Qun a little bit to help end the Blight. But we do see that he is devoted to it. I can't see him outright defying orders from the Aura'Qun. He might bend the rules a little, but I can't imagine he would defy them. And remember, this invasion is after the Vidisala's plot in Trespasser, which we established probably came from the top. And who is the top of the Ben Hassrath? The Aura'Qun. So why commit to the Dragon's Breath, of which members of the Antaam were a part of, but then pull back when time for a proper invasion came? Yeah, Dragon's Breath failed, but is it not likely that some Qunari may disagree with the decision to pull back? Someone like Rasan, who advises the Arishok on the will of the Qun, and is heir to the Aura'Qun herself? As we know from Three Trees to Midnight, the Ben Hassrath disagree with how the Antaam are conducting themselves. So this could mean a few things. Perhaps Rasan and her detachment of soldiers disagreed with what Arishok Sten was doing, and went to focus on the Dread Wolf. Or Rasan advised Sten to invade Tevinter, convincing him that it was the will of the Qun after the Dragon's Breath failed. She may even believe that. But why would she make this decision without approval from the Aura'Qun? Well, maybe she had approval. Maybe the Aura'Qun ordered the whole conspiracy. Or maybe Rasan herself is manipulating everybody. She sent the main force of the Antaam to invade, while she and the Ben Hassrath are hunting Solas. So either the Aura'Qun ordered it, or Rasan is one hell of a trickster. But we come back to the same question of why invade. Is it possible the invasion is primarily a huge distraction? Or is Rasan possibly trying to split the Qun so she can take control of it? Qunari are supposedly taught to never do that, but I can see Rasan taking the stance that she is doing it for the good of the Qun. The Ben Hassrath say that the Antaam are not acting in accordance with the Qun, but evidently don't care enough to stop them. Would it not be a simple matter to tell the Arishok, hey, the Qun says to stop doing this? Or at least, hey, you're being too brutal, just tone it down a notch. Someone high on the chain of command is pulling the strings here. If not the Aura'Qun herself, then Rasan. So there's the theory. Our Sten, the new Arishok, is being manipulated by Rasan, possibly under orders from the Aura'Qun. Meanwhile, the Ben Hassrath are focused on Solas. Rasan has her own personal detachment of Antaam answering directly to her as she searches for the true name of the Dread Wolf, who the Qunari know was called Solas. But evidently, Rasan believes he had another name. And I'm actually super excited to see more of her hunt for that. So before I go, I want to give a special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon, Fen'Harel, Girl Tries Games, Lev Sabin, and Katie Louise. Thank you all so much. If any of you guys want to talk more about anything and get some behind-the-scenes content, jump on over to the Discord link in the description to chat with me and other fans. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to comment and like, and remember, Tala Nadas.